it's a moral obligation for me. It's something I have to do. If you see something that you know is wrong, you have to. You can't just sort of sit back and hope it will change. You need to get out there and actually make that change yourself.
Hi beautiful beings, it's Rebecca, the Vegan Pixie Warrior. Welcome to my YouTube channel. Today I'm interviewing Danny Howells, who is an animal rights activist and a DJ. He's based in London, and I'm hoping by the end of the video you'll be inspired to get involved in activism in your area, or if you're in London then you'll be inspired to get in touch with him and reach out. Enjoy. Massive thank you and welcome to my channel, and thank you for agreeing to this interview. How are you today?
Yeah, good. Thank you for having me. And yeah, all good. It's our second day of lockdown over here, so just readjusting to sort of slightly different sort of like lifestyle. So yeah, we'll see how we get on.
Yeah, lockdown 2.0, right?
2.0, yeah.
So can I ask when you first became vegan, and what was it that made you make that choice?
Well, literally we're coming up to 5 years now. So it was in January 2016. It started, I mean, what made me make that choice was that it wasn't actually one particular thing. It was kind of like a whole bunch of things really that sort of took place over a period of time. I think quite a few years previously, there's so many different things happened really. I mean, I think that one of the key things for me, I remember when it was me and my ex, we were out on a journey in my car, and the car broke down, and we broke down next to a field where there were sheep. And we got out waiting for the AA to arrive, and we were playing with the sheep and giving them grass and giving them strokes and stuff. And then we sort of looked at each other and were like, oh my God, we eat these animals. And that was kind of like one of the first sort of things that made me think about these kind of things. And then there were other things. I think around that sort of time I started to follow, sort of animal rights groups on social media. And I think I started to donate to people at RSPCA and helping out. I'd started to do some volunteer work with the Mayhew, kind of thinking, well, I'm eating animals, I'm doing my bit. But, at the end of the day, it was just, ridiculous really, as we know now with organisations like RSPCA. And then there were a couple more things that happened as well. There wasn't one real sort of major moment, but I remember one key thing that happened to me again a bit later on was when I was actually on a flight and flying back from on a business trip, and I got upgraded, and they gave me a steak on the flight, and I remember cutting into it and blood came out, and I was just absolutely repulsed. I was mortified, and I was nauseous, and gave it back, and I couldn't eat it. I said, right, I'm not going to eat animals anymore. So I started to research veganism, and I started to look into these different things, but I didn't do it straight away. It took me a couple more years after that before I went vegan, but I think I knew I had to do it. I didn't really sort of discuss it with people, but I just kind of worked towards it, and just sort of worked one thing at a time. And with hindsight, I realise now I should have just done it straight away, and I really do regret that. I think the moment I became aware of it, I think I should have just done it. And I think, especially now, with it being 100 times easier than it was just a few years back, I only wish I could have done that. But what we've done, what's done is done. But yeah, it was a whole number of things really. I do kind of wish that I'd been aware of what happens in these industries when I was a kid, because we were never made aware of that. It was like most of us, we go to school and you get taught about Shakespeare, you get taught about religion and this kind of thing, but you don't get taught about where this lump of flesh on your plate, or where this glass of milk comes from, or the suffering behind it, and these things are not on your radar as a kid, and they should be. And I really wish that they had been for me, because I think I would have made changes a lot sooner. I mean, I was late. I mean, when I go out and do activism, I'm surrounded by people that are in their late teens, early 20s, and I'm coming up 50 now. So I was one of the real sort of late ones, but we just didn't know.
No,
really
it's better
didn't
late
know.
than never, though, right?
It is, yeah. And I think you can sort of, I mean, for me personally, I feel getting involved in activism is a way of sort of trying to sort of undo. You can't ever undo the damage that you've done, but you can sort of try and undo as much of the damage, and hopefully be there for people in the age. Who at the age that you wish you had been when you found out about these things, that you can share your knowledge with.
I'm exactly the same as you. Like I went vegan at 40, so I was pretty late to it. And I was one of those meat eaters that would wind up my vegetarian and vegan friends. And a month before I went vegan, I was at a barbecue festival in Bristol, and I was fighting for the wings in the competition. And we knew some of the barbecues at the competition. They were from Plymouth, where I used to live. And we got such a good relationship because we used to go every single year. Me and my husband, we were massive barbecue fans, huge meat eaters. And we got so pally with them that they'd give us like their like stuff from the competition that wasn't good enough for the competition. So yeah, we if you'd have told me then a month later I'd be vegan, I never would have believed you. But I
Yeah,
have exactly the same thoughts as you about activism. I feel like
yeah,
I'm making up for all of those years that I paid for it and contributed to it by now being as active as I can. And I
yeah,
just now my focus is not just getting people to go to become vegan, but in trying to inspire other vegans to become active, because it's just not enough in my eyes to just be vegan. And I want
yeah.
more of us out there. I want to be able to give more people a voice and options to get active. In the world are you based?
So I'm based in London. I've been living here for about oh my god, about 13 years. And I came from Hastings in the South Coast. So yeah, came to London I think 2007,
And
which is
when
great
did
as
you?
well. On here, which is fantastic as well.
Yeah, London's quite good for activism. I'm quite lucky in Bristol as well. There's a lot going on here, so
Yeah,
there's lots of different groups for people to get involved in, which I think is important.
yeah,
Because not there's not going to be one type of activism that fits every single person. It's there's different things for different people.
yeah.
So when did you first become active after going vegan, and what
So when
how did you get
vegan,
involved in it?
yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like, I think I sort of even before I went vegan, I sort of realised I needed to do a bit more. Need to do more. So I think in my sort of like final months of being non-vegan, I was doing a lot of I was getting involved with things. I was actually sort of volunteering for a place like the Mayhew, and I was going out sort of fundraising and things like that. I was kind of trying to sort of find my way and sort of work out what I could be doing. I think when I went vegan, I spent a year online, you know, basically getting into fights and going on to every sort of like animal rights post and sort of trying to sort of deluding myself into thinking I could sort of beat the trolls. And you know, I think towards the end of the year, and I think after a year of doing that, I realised, okay, it's not getting anywhere. You know, I'm just like driving myself crazy. you know, I'll stay up until 5 a.m. arguing with these people, only just end up being blocked. So I thought, well, I need to do more. So I think it would get exactly a year after I went vegan. So January 2017. I was thinking, right, one of my New Year's resolutions is to actually get involved, get active. Don't know how, but I'm going to do it. And I think around that time as well, I'd started to sort of follow. There's two people actually that I've been following their activism online, and one was Earthling Ed, and then one was Joseph Gaffney, who obviously passed away at the beginning of the year. And these were two people I started to follow their videos. Both were doing sort of street activism, talking to members of the public, calling people out for wearing fur, talking to people about dairy industry, and you know, all these different subjects. Both with completely different approaches as well. But I was fascinated by each of them as well. And I think after watching, watching those for quite a while, and also other, sort of like videos along those same sort of lines, sort of started to think, well, you know, I could do that. Or you started to sort of be able to predict what you would say in that situation, and then you were like, well, maybe I could do more. So I was like, right, the next thing that comes along, I'm going to go and do it. And the next thing that came along was I saw one of my friends was posting on Facebook that they were having a fur protest outside Harvey Nichols. So I trundled up to that. I knew one person there, who was a guy called Jayesh Patel, who I'd
I know
seen from
JS.
Facebook. Yeah, he was one of the first activists that I met actually, and he was lovely. And I said, you know, I've not done this before. What do I do? Blah blah blah. And he just sort of explained it to me. Then he said, oh, okay, well later on today there's going to be another third protest up at Portobello Road. So yeah, so after this sort of very calm and quite laid back protest outside Harvey Nichols, suddenly thrown into the absolute thick of things by going out to Portobello Road, and everybody was there. I mean, all these people that I knew from Facebook, and it was just chaos, and people were getting punched, and people were shouting at each other, and police were there, and it was crazy. But I was kind of like, well, okay, well, I've done that, I've done protesting. Let's try everything that we can. So yeah, for that particular year, which really sort of threw myself into it. and just did everything we could really. I think the next event I did after that was East London Chicken Save. Then I think I did, it would have been Earthlings Experience, there would have been AV. Then we started going up and down the country to different outreach events and different vigils and that kind of thing. So yeah, 2017, it really spiraled. But so it was a year from going vegan to getting active.
And what a great person to do your first event with. I've only met Jayesh once. He spoke at our Animal Rights March in Bristol last year, and he's just such a lovely, calm guy to be around. He's so supportive as well.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It was actually his son Rishi. He posted the event on Facebook. I think Rishi had been doing quite a lot of spaces, and I'd been sharing them. And then he said, oh, "Okay, it's gonna be a third process day." He wasn't actually there, but Jayesh was there. But yes, that was my very first day, and a very, very, really memorable day as well. Lots of funny things happened, and it was like, okay, this is something else. He was very welcoming, and he kind of like made me feel like, okay, you know. It was kind of like very laid back, you know, if it's not for you, it's not for you. But there's, you know, sort of explaining as well that the good thing about activism is there is something for everybody. If you're not up for dealing with sort of like aggressive market traders selling fur, there's 100 other things you can be doing. If you are able to sort of do more physical things that might be a bit more confrontational, then there's 100 things you could be doing there. So yeah, it made me realise that, you know, you sort of like, you can try all these different things out, find the areas where you feel comfortable and also where you feel you can be effective. And you know, many people are actually sort of like flexible and fit into all these different kind of roles, and other people are more suited to one or two different things in particular.
Yeah, I agree. Like my preferred form is doing street outreach. I do, you know, I do find it like the most effective. I think campaigning is good as well. But I think there's a place for all forms of activism. It's just finding what's right for you.
Yeah.
And that leads me on to my next question. What is the best form of activism for you? What fits you?
Do you know what? I really can't answer that. I mean, I think I can find, there's things I feel more comfortable in. I mean, I really do enjoy street activism. One of the reasons being, well, there's a couple of reasons actually. One of the reasons being that I feel it really draws in a lot of new activists, and I think that is key. I mean, we can't really sort of, there's no way of saying how effective, you can't sort of say, okay, you don't know how many people are going to go home and going to go vegan, or how truly going to research, but I think it opens up the conversation and it makes people think. But I think really importantly as well, it actually gets a lot of new people on board. It's a great inroad for activists. Whether they stay doing that form of activism forever, we don't know, but they might go off to do other things, and it gets people involved, which I think is fantastic. Also as well, I kind of think back to when I was in my sort of days when I was kind of like umming and ahhing, wasn't sure where I was going with it. I think if I had stumbled across, say, like an Earthlings Experience or a Down Dairy or an AV, that could have been the trigger for me, you know, because I was already sort of considering things and I was already researching things. It just took another, you know, it could have just taken another push in that direction to get me. So I do think that's a really, really valid form of activism. I don't know if I can think there's actually one particular form of activism which is like the most important. I think they all have such great importance, and I think they all kind of work together. I think, you know, like you said, like street activism is really important, but I think also campaigning as well, and then also as well we have a lot of things that aren't covered. For example, in general street activism, I think with general street activism we tend to focus more on sort of like farmed animals, because you've only got like about 2-3 minutes to talk to somebody.
Yeah.
Most of the time you're going to talk about the things that they're doing 3-4 times a day, which is sitting down and eating an animal. But there's a lot of things that we don't cover in those, or don't always cover. Things like vivisection, obviously things like sport. We can see right now with the Melbourne Cup, things like fox hunting, badger cull.
The wool industry, the leather industry as well, doesn't really.
Exactly, yeah, totally. And you know, quite a lot of time you might not get a chance. That's why I do believe having all these different forms of activism. So you've got like, so you take it one Sunday in London, you're going to have hunt stabbing in the morning. Then you're going to have like, you might have a march. You'll have Canada Goose. You'll have the Earthlings Experience. You'll have an anti-vivisection demo. This is fantastic. It's kind of like hitting all these different areas, and I think even if I think sometimes as well, it also helps you to educate yourself on these particular subjects. If you go out and you do like a demo outside a horse racing track, you're going to have to bone up and learn about what happens in these industries, and so it helps you grow a lot more as well, I think, as an activist. So yeah, I mean, I think they're all so vital. I mean, there's some things that I might see online, you know, I might see some action that takes place, and I kind of think, well, I'll sort of question the effectiveness of it, where I sometimes might think it looks more of a stunt or something like that. But I think, you know, I think the most important thing is just to be active.
Yeah,
You know,
I agree.
Yeah.
A busy man when we're not in lockdown, and you're touring a lot and playing in different countries, I expect, with you DJing.
Yeah.
How do you fit all this activism into your life?
Well, I'm older, like I said to you at the start. So I'm kind of more towards the tail end of my career anyway. I mean, I was much busier, sort of like mid 2000s to the end, you know, to the beginning of the 2010s. Things had sort of, I think any sort of career, like in something like music or anything like that, you have a peak, and then you can, you know, then you sort of like, if things start to slow a little bit, and you can either sort of fight against it and just try and remain relevant and just do whatever and keep producing music or whatever, just stay in the public eye, get onto Instagram, Facebook, you know, posting 10 selfies a day and this kind of thing. I'm not comfortable with that. I'm kind of a bit more like, let things sort of take their natural path. My career has basically sort of got a lot quieter over the last couple of years, and it's basically enabled me to have a really good balance between sort of DJing and the activism, which is fantastic. I think I was very lucky in that sense, actually, because they're two things that I'm extremely passionate about, and I love as well, and was able to sort of do them both. And by doing both, it kind of meant that I never got too stuck into one or the other, so I wasn't really ever getting bored of one particular thing, because the minute I started to get a bit tired of going to vigils or going to activism events, I'd have to go away and do DJ gigs. And then before you get too bored of that, or you get tired of being away from home, or you get tired of flying or whatever, you're going back to London to do those more activism. So it was lovely having that balance. Obviously the balance has shifted somewhat in 2020, which was kind of unexpected. But and as for the future, I mean, I've got no clue really. But yeah, it was a very nice, good position to be in, definitely.
Good. And do you run any events yourself, or do you join other events?
Both. I kind of taken over a few events that were kind of a little bit more sort of say lying dormant. So down with Dairy in London, sort of involved with East London Chicken Save as well, which is kind of got a bit quiet now recently. And then there's other little bits as well that we sort of do. A few little bits that aren't really sort of on social media so much, but yeah. And then I sort of try and attend what I can. I mean, things like sort of sabbing, I'll sort of try and do when I can. Attending the protests that are out there. I mean, I try and sort of dip into everything really. I mean, also at the same time, I'm very wary that maintaining self-care is really important as well. So I don't push myself to crazy lengths, which I think some people, I mean, I think I might have done maybe a few years back. I think when I first started doing activism, I was kind of relentless. And, you know, I had a car then, I don't have a car anymore, but we were going to vigils, you know, several times a week up and down the country, and really kind of, you know, pushing ourselves, I think. But I don't think I could sustain that for too long. I think, because for me, I think activism, it's like music in a way. I mean, I've always been, with both of these things, my sort of dual passions, I've always been about being in it for the long term, which means rather than sort of like just going crazy all the time, just sort of pacing yourself so you're never burning out, you're not getting sort of fatigued, you're not becoming jaded. And again with the music as well, you know, sort of like by not overdoing it, by not going crazy with it, it remains a pleasure and it never becomes a job. And that's the thing. I think it's important to still be enjoying. I mean, obviously you're not going to be enjoying everything you do in activism, because we're not dealing with a pleasant subject at all. We're dealing with like the worst atrocities imaginable. But there's ways of doing it that you're not actually sort of digging yourself into an early grave. And I think that's so important. You know, we're going to be doing this for life. And so yeah, you know, it's just maintaining that balance between doing activism and doing as much as you can, as well as making time for yourself and making sure that you're not burning yourself out and you feel good.
Yeah, I feel like I may have got there last year. We were doing, at the time, I was an organizer for AV, I'm not anymore. But we were doing 4 cubes a month. So
Right.
I did speak to someone this week, and she does 3 cubes a week. She was doing. I was like, my God, that's mental. But we were doing 4 a month, and I was getting so frustrated. And all the conversations I was having from November to December were horrendous. All the outreach conversations, and
Yeah.
I was getting frustrated, and I wasn't reacting very well to what they were saying. And then when January came and we had our first Cuba Chief in January, I was like, I'm not going to do outreach today. I'll stay on the camera and I'll film people doing their outreach, because I was just so jaded by what had happened before
Yeah.
and affected by that. And I think I may have had burnout at that point, and
Right.
that's what caused it. But that same day when I said I wasn't going to do outreach, I did some, and it went so well. I was like, yep, right, I'll get back to it. I was just obviously having a bad couple of months, because it can get
Yeah.
frustrated and it can get on top of you, and you do need to take that time to look after yourself and know what your limits are as well.
That's so important. It really is. Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean, it's hard to explain really. I think that's so, you need to keep an eye on that. I think you just know, I think your body knows. And there's always this pressure to push yourself a little bit further and to push yourself a little bit further. But I think there are times you just got to say, look, I can't do this. I mean, I think that since when lockdown started, obviously a lot of the activism changed because obviously the events weren't there. So a lot of us got a lot more involved in local wildlife protection groups. And suddenly you went from being, you know, like out like every single day of the week, sort of like rescuing animals and stuff. And again, that was a similar kind of thing. You wear yourself out, and sometimes you've got to say no. And it really, it's the hardest thing to do is to say no. But you just sometimes have to know your limits. You
yeah.
really do. And
If you're not
you know,
looking after yourself, then you're no good for the animals, right?
absolutely, yeah, completely. And like you said about having a conversation as well. I mean, I've been out before and I've had a conversation. I thought I was absolutely terrible, and it was like, you know, what have you actually achieved with that? And nothing at all. But you go away, you go home, you think about what happened, and you say to yourself, well, that's not going to happen again. Why did that happen? And you make sure you don't put yourself into that situation again. I mean, obviously, with anything like this, you know, there's not every conversation can be amazing. If you're talking about outreach, not every protest you go to, not every interaction you have is going to be amazing. There'll be some that will be surprisingly good, some that will be disastrous.
But you
And you
can,
sort of recognize that. But I think sometimes you can realize that something was not great because of external factors. And like, you know, if you're burning yourself out or you're doing, you know, X amount of events a week, you can sort
yeah.
of say, well, maybe I need to cut back a little bit there.
Yeah, that's the same with me. I was furloughed during lockdown, or the first lockdown I was furloughed. And I was doing a lot of vigils towards the end of when lockdown was eased up a little bit. But I
Yeah,
still wasn't back at work. I didn't even know if I was going to have a job at the end of it. So luckily I have. But I was asked to be an organizer for the Save, and I was organizer for AV, and I just started my YouTube channel up. And then when I was going back to work, because I work full time Monday to Friday, I
yeah,
said to the Save movement, I'm really sorry, I'm going to have to step down. The main reason was because I felt like a bit of a hypocrite being an organizer when I wouldn't be able to go to many vigils because of my work schedule. So,
right,
and
yeah.
but I also knew that if I was doing that and AV and my YouTube and working, I would have no time for my relationship. I'd have no time for me, and I'll support them where I can. But having that
Yeah,
extra responsibility, I knew that I wouldn't be able to do it. So,
yeah. That sounds like you did the right thing. Absolutely,
yeah, 100%.
completely.
And
Yeah.
how do you advertise your events then? So if people want to get in touch with you, people watching this interview think that they'd like to reach out and get in touch, how do you advertise your events?
Well, most of the things I do, obviously, like all London based. So we have quite a few big WhatsApp groups. The events that I do obviously down with area, I do that through the Surge page. So that will be on the Surge page once a month. Obviously, not now, but we'll hopefully resume that in December. For some of the other events, for example, like East London Chicken Save and some of the other little bits that are going on, I'm on Facebook as Danny Howells. You can just message me there or on Instagram, and yeah, and just go from there basically.
Cool. And can I
Yeah.
ask you, what does being an animal rights activist mean to you?
What does it mean to me? I don't know. I'm not very good at answering questions like this, but I feel it's kind of like, I do feel it's like it's a moral obligation for me. It's something I have to do. I don't know how to answer that really. It's quite a tough one, but yeah, it's what I have to do.
Yep.
Yeah.
And what would you say to other vegans that aren't active and are maybe interested or have been thinking about it and are not sure? What would you say to inspire them to get active?
Well, I think most vegans, I mean, all vegans would have done it because they've seen what happens in these industries, and they obviously they want to make a stand against it. And I'd say just do it. You know, I think we numbers are struggling. I think, like we said, we touched on these different forms of activism before. It's not just the forms of activism that we see. You know, like people like Joey Carbstrong doing that, outreach and this kind of thing. It spans, you know, so many different sort of areas. And we just need so many people. And I think, like we said, also what we touched on before as well is the fact that there is something for everybody. Just get out there and do it. We really can't. If you see something that you know is wrong, you have to. You can't just sort of sit back and hope it will change. You need to get out there and actually make that change yourself. And so I just encourage everybody to get out there, get involved, and find what suits you. You might find that one particular thing suits you. You might find it be 10 different forms of activism suits you, but you won't know until you try it. So just get out there and do it.
Yep, I 100% agree. Thank you for this interview, and hopefully people will be inspired by listening to you, and your dedication and all the work for the animals is amazing. So I want to say thank you for that as well.
Well, that's so kind. Thank you. And vice versa as well. Thank you.
Enjoyed that video with Danny. He's such a lovely guy. I really enjoyed talking to him, and I can't wait for COVID to be over and to go to London and do some activism with him, because he's does amazing work and he's a fierce fighter for the animals. If you have been inspired by Danny's video, then please drop a comment below. Let me know. I'll put some links in the description of how you can get in touch with him and get involved in some of his activism that he does. Subscribe button, press like and share this video. Massive thank you to my patrons on my Patreon page that support me and allow me to continue making these videos. If you do like my content and you want to support me in making more footage, then please check out my Patreon page in the link below. Thanks again for watching, and I'll see you next time.